I called my parents to tell them that my husband died. They said they were busy at my sister's birthday party. Days later they came to ask for 50% of the inheritance. My 8-year-old daughter gave them an envelope and said, "That's why you came, right?" When they opened it, their hands started to shake. I'm Rachel Morgan, 32 years old, and last Tuesday, my husband Kevin died of a sudden heart attack. The shock still hasn't worn off. When I called my parents, sobbing uncontrollably, my mother said, "We're celebrating Sophia's birthday right now. Can this wait until tomorrow?" My 8-year-old daughter, Lily, and I sat alone that night, holding each other as our world collapsed. I never imagined my family would abandon us in our darkest hour. But what they did next was even worse. If you've ever felt betrayed by family when you needed them the most, please let me know where you're watching from and subscribe to join others who understand this pain. Kevin and I met during our sophomore year at Northwestern University. I was struggling through economics, and he was the charming teaching assistant who stayed after class to help me understand depreciation curves. His patience was the first thing I fell in love with, followed quickly by his infectious laugh and the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. We dated through college, and he proposed on graduation day, hiding the ring in my diploma case. We married young at 23, ignoring warnings from friends who said we should experience life before settling down. But Kevin was my life. He was the person I wanted to experience everything with. After finishing his MBA, Kevin landed a job at a prestigious financial advisory firm in Chicago. He worked his way up quickly, impressing clients with his honest approach and genuine care for their financial well-being. He wasn't just good with numbers, he was good with people. That combination made him exceptional at his job. We spent 5 wonderful years as a couple before deciding to try for a baby. What we thought would be an easy journey turned into 3 years of heartbreak. 2 miscarriages, countless doctor appointments, and 1 failed round of IVF later, we were emotionally exhausted and financially drained. We started discussing adoption when I unexpectedly became pregnant with Lily. The pregnancy was difficult. I was on bed rest for the final 2 months, and Kevin worked from home to take care of me. He'd bring me breakfast in bed, massage my swollen feet, and read pregnancy books aloud to both me and our unborn daughter. When Lily finally arrived, Kevin cried harder than I did, holding her tiny body against his chest like she was made of glass. For 8 beautiful years, we were the family I'd always dreamed of having. Kevin coached Lily's soccer team despite knowing nothing about soccer. He learned alongside her, watching YouTube tutorials at night after she went to bed. He never missed a school event or a doctor's appointment. His calendar was filled with reminders about Lily's activities, color-coded by importance. There were warning signs about his health that we both ignored. Occasional chest pains he attributed to stress. Shortness of breath he blamed on being out of shape. The doctor said his slightly elevated blood pressure was normal for a man approaching 40 with a high-pressure job. Take some aspirin, exercise more, cut back on sodium. Standard advice we took too casually. The morning it happened started like any other Tuesday. Kevin made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs while I packed Lily's lunch. He kissed us both goodbye, promised to be home early for Lily's school art show, and headed to work. His last words to me were, "Don't forget to pick up more maple syrup. The real stuff, not that corn syrup garbage." Such a mundane final conversation. At 10:47 a.m., my phone rang. It was Amanda, Kevin's assistant. Her voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand her. "Rachel." Kevin collapsed during a client meeting. "The ambulance is here. They're taking him to Northwestern Memorial." I remember dropping my coffee mug. The sound of ceramic shattering on tile seems to echo in my memory. I called our neighbor Ellen to pick up Lily from school, then drove to the hospital, breaking every speed limit. I prayed the entire way, bargaining with God in desperate whispers, but I was too late. Kevin was pronounced dead at 11:23 a.m., minutes before I arrived. "Massive heart attack," they said. Nothing could have been done, they assured me, as if that made it better somehow. Seeing Kevin's body was surreal. He looked like he was sleeping, except for the unnatural stillness of his chest. His skin was still warm when I touched his face. I kept expecting him to open his eyes, to smile, and tell me this was all a terrible mistake. The next few hours passed in a blur of paperwork and phone calls. The funeral home needed decisions I wasn't prepared to make. Cremation or burial? What kind of service? Did he have a favorite suit? Questions that seemed impossible to answer when all I wanted to do was crawl into bed with my husband one last time. The hardest part was driving home knowing I had to tell Lily that her father was never coming back. How do you explain death to an 8-year-old? How do you tell her that the daddy who made dinosaur pancakes that morning was gone forever? Telling Lily about her father was the most difficult moment of my life. When she got into my car after school, she immediately sensed something was wrong. "Where's Daddy?" "He promised to come to my art show tonight," she said, her backpack clutched in her small hands. I pulled over to the side of the road because I couldn't focus on driving. Turning to face her, I took her hands in mine. "Lily, something very sad happened today. Daddy got very sick at work, and his heart stopped working." Her face scrunched in confusion. "Can the doctors fix it?" The innocent hope in her question broke something inside me. "No, sweetie. When someone's heart stops working completely, the doctors can't fix it. Daddy died today." She stared at me for what felt like an eternity. Her blue eyes, so much like Kevin's, processing this incomprehensible information. Then she asked, "Does that mean Daddy isn't coming home ever?" When I nodded, unable to speak through my tears, she let out a wail that didn't sound human. It was primal, the pure sound of a child's heart breaking. She threw herself into my arms, her small body shaking with sobs. "I want Daddy. Please, I want my Daddy." There was nothing I could do but hold her and cry with her, parked on the side of the road as life continued all around us, oblivious to our shattered world. That evening, after I'd finally gotten Lily to sleep in my bed, clutching Kevin's unwashed t-shirt for comfort, the full weight of my loss hit me. I sat on the bathroom floor, door closed so Lily wouldn't hear, and broke down completely. The physical pain of grief was overwhelming, like being repeatedly punched in the chest. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I needed my mom and dad. With shaking hands, I called my parents. They'd been married for 40 years, had weathered losses together. Surely they would know what to say, how to help me through this impossible time. My mother answered on the 5th ring, the sound of laughter and music in the background. "Rachel, can I call you back? We're in the middle of Sophia's birthday dinner." "Mom," I choked out, barely able to form words through my sobs. "Kevin died this morning. He had a heart attack at work. He's gone." There was a pause, and I heard her cover the phone and say something to someone else. When she returned, her voice was slightly more somber, but still distracted. "Oh my goodness, that's terrible. Are you sure? Maybe there's been a mistake." "I saw his body, Mom. There's no mistake." The fact that I had to convince my own mother that my husband was actually dead felt like another trauma on top of everything else. "Well, this is quite a shock, but sweetie, we're in the middle of Sophia's 40th birthday celebration. Everyone's here. We've got the caterers. Can you manage tonight, and we'll come by tomorrow when things settle down?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My sister's birthday party took precedence over her son-in-law's death, over her daughter and granddaughter's acute grief. My father got on the phone then. "Rachel, this is awful news. Was Kevin's life insurance policy up to date? You know, you should call the company first thing tomorrow." Not "I'm coming right over." Not "what can we do to help," but a question about life insurance while my husband's body was barely cold. "I can't believe this is your response," I said, my voice hollow. "My husband just died. Lily lost her father. And you're at a party." "Now, Rachel," my father said in that condescending tone he'd used throughout my childhood. "Sophia has been planning this milestone birthday for months. Everyone took time off work to be here. We can't just walk out. Be reasonable." Reasonable? As if grief followed any rules of reason. "Forget I called," I said, and hung up. Within minutes, my phone was flooded with text messages from friends who had somehow heard the news. Kevin's college roommate Brian, my colleague Jennifer, even my old high school friend Taylor, who I hadn't spoken to in years, all offering condolences, asking what they could do to help. Strangers showed more compassion than my own family. My neighbor Ellen came over with a casserole and sat with me at the kitchen table as I tried to make a list of people to notify. She offered to stay the night, but I declined. I needed to be alone with Lily, to start figuring out how we would navigate this new, terrifying reality without Kevin. That first night was endless. Lily had nightmares and kept waking up calling for her daddy. I lay beside her, stroking her hair and telling her stories about Kevin, about how much he loved her, about how brave he thought she was. Eventually, she fell into an exhausted sleep, but I remained awake, staring at the ceiling, the absence of Kevin's warmth beside me an unbearable void. Morning came, and with it, the crushing realization that this wasn't a nightmare I could wake from. This was our life now, a life without Kevin. A life where my own parents couldn't be bothered to show up when I needed them most. Kevin's funeral was scheduled for Saturday, 4 days after his death. Those days passed in a fog of arrangements, paperwork, and trying to comfort Lily while barely holding myself together. My parents called once, briefly, to ask what time the service started and if they should wear black or if it was a celebration of life with colorful attire. They didn't offer to help with arrangements or ask how Lily was coping. The day of the funeral dawned bright and sunny, cruelly beautiful for such a dark occasion. Lily insisted on wearing a blue dress because Daddy always said I looked like a princess in blue. I helped her with her hair, weaving a small braid along her temple the way Kevin used to do on special occasions. We arrived at the funeral home an hour early to greet people. Kevin's colleagues from the financial firm came first, somber in their dark suits, many of them openly crying. They had lost not just a coworker but a friend. They each took time with Lily, sharing small stories about her father that she might treasure later. My parents and Sophia were supposed to arrive early, too, but they texted 20 minutes before the service was scheduled to begin, saying they were running late due to traffic. They finally walked in as people were being seated, making a small commotion as they found places in the front row that I had reserved for family. My mother hugged me briefly, her perfume overwhelming. The traffic was terrible, and Sophia had a hard time finding something appropriate to wear on such short notice. Short notice, as if Kevin's death were an inconvenient dinner party. Throughout the service, I was acutely aware of Sophia checking her phone, my father glancing at his watch, my mother dabbing at dry eyes for show. Meanwhile, Kevin's colleagues and our friends were genuinely distraught, their grief palpable and real. In contrast to my family's detachment, Kevin's brother Marcus showed true devastation. He had flown in from Japan where he taught English, arriving just hours before the service. He looked exhausted and hollow-eyed, having clearly not slept on the 30-hour journey. He sat next to Lily, holding her hand throughout the service, their identical blue eyes filled with tears. When it came time for the eulogy, I wasn't sure I could do it. My legs felt like lead as I approached the podium. But then I looked at Lily, sitting there so brave and small in her blue dress, and found the strength somewhere. I spoke about Kevin's kindness, his integrity, his boundless love for his daughter. I spoke about his terrible jokes that made us groan and laugh at the same time. About his irrational hatred of cilantro and his passionate defense of proper maple syrup. About the way he always put family first. The bitter irony of those last words wasn't lost on me as I glanced at my parents, who were already gathering their things as I concluded, clearly eager to leave. During the reception at our house afterward, I overheard my father talking to my Uncle James near the drinks table. Kevin was doing very well at that firm. Partner track. The life insurance alone must be substantial, not to mention the investments. Rachel will be set for life. It took everything in me not to confront him then and there, to demand how he could be thinking about money on the day we buried my husband. But I was too emotionally exhausted, too focused on making sure Lily was okay, to start a scene. My mother and Sophia barely helped with the reception, leaving most of the work to Kevin's colleagues' wives and my friends. They sat in the living room accepting condolences as if they were the primary mourners, while I moved through my own home like a ghost, mechanically thanking people for coming, accepting casseroles I would never eat. Meanwhile, Kevin's parents, though devastated by the loss of their only son, were models of genuine support. His mother, Diana, took over caring for Lily during the reception, making sure she ate and protecting her from well-meaning but overwhelming guests. His father, Robert, quietly organized the cleanup afterward, staying until the last guest had left. The contrast between Kevin's family and my own was stark and painful. As I watched my in-laws support each other in their grief, while also finding strength to support me and Lily, I felt the absence of that same love from my own parents like a physical wound. Kevin's will had been mentioned briefly during a conversation with the funeral director, but I couldn't bear to think about legal matters yet. Thomas, Kevin's friend from law school who had handled our estate planning, gently suggested we wait a week or two before discussing the details. There's no rush, he assured me. Everything is in order, and you and Lily are well provided for. Kevin made sure of that. As the house finally emptied of guests, my parents and Sophia made quick excuses about getting on the road before dark. They left with perfunctory hugs and promises to call soon. They didn't offer to stay and help clean up. Didn't ask if Lily and I wanted company. Didn't acknowledge that this would be our first night after officially saying goodbye to Kevin. Instead, Marcus and Kevin's parents stayed. Diana made up the guest room for Kevin's parents and the sofa for Marcus. "We'll be right here if you need anything during the night," Diana said, hugging me tightly. "You're not alone, Rachel. Remember that." But as I lay in bed that night, listening to Lily's soft breathing beside me, I couldn't help feeling that in one crucial way, I was very much alone. The people who should have been my first line of support, my bedrock in time of crisis, had proven themselves unworthy of that role. 2 weeks after the funeral, I was sitting at the kitchen table trying to make sense of our health insurance situation when the doorbell rang. Lily was at school, her first week back since losing her father. The teachers were keeping a close eye on her and sending me regular updates, for which I was grateful. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing on the porch, my father straightening his golf shirt, my mother checking her reflection in her compact mirror. I hadn't spoken to them since the funeral. They'd texted a few times with generic messages like "thinking of you and hope you're doing okay," but there had been no real communication. I opened the door, not bothering to hide my surprise. "I didn't know you were coming over. We thought we'd check in, see how you and Lily are doing," my mother said, brushing past me into the house. "Is she at school?" "Good. We can talk openly." That should have been my first clue that this wasn't simply a supportive visit, but I was too emotionally drained to pick up on the warning signs. They settled themselves in the living room while I made coffee, falling into the hostess role automatically, even though they should have been taking care of me. When I brought in the mugs, my father was examining the new sound system Kevin had installed just a month before his death. "Nice setup," he commented, running his hand along the speakers. Kevin had good taste in electronics. He did, I agreed. The simple past tense still a knife twist in my heart. After a few minutes of awkward small talk about Lily's school and my mother's garden club, my father cleared his throat in the way he always did before discussing serious matters. "Rachel, we wanted to talk to you about your situation," he began, setting his coffee mug down precisely on a coaster. "My situation?" "Your financial situation," my mother clarified, exchanging glances with my father. "Now that you're adjusting to life without Kevin." I stared at them, not comprehending at first what they were getting at. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Kevin left us well provided for." "Yes. Well, that's what we wanted to discuss," my father said, leaning forward. "Your mother and I are getting older. Our retirement fund took a hit in the last market downturn, and with health care costs what they are." The implication hung in the air for a moment before I understood. "Are you asking me for money?" "Now." My mother had the grace to look slightly embarrassed, but my father pressed on. "We thought, given Kevin's position at the firm and his life insurance policy, that you might be in a position to help family. After all, we are your parents." The audacity of their request left me momentarily speechless. "How much are you thinking?" I asked, my voice flat. My father, apparently missing my tone completely, brightened. "Well, we were thinking something substantial would make sense. Perhaps 50% of the life insurance payout. That would secure our retirement and leave plenty for you and Lily. 50% of my widowed daughter's support." "To secure your retirement," I repeated the words slowly, making sure I understood. "The daughter you couldn't be bothered to comfort when her husband died because you were at a birthday party." My mother flinched, but my father remained unperturbed. "Now, Rachel, there's no need to be emotional about this. It's just practical financial planning. And we did come to the funeral." "How generous of you to attend my husband's funeral," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "We raised you, Rachel," my mother interjected. "We paid for your college education. We helped with the down payment on your first house. I think we deserve some consideration now that you've come into money." "Come into money?" "My husband died." I was shouting now, all the hurt and rage of the past 2 weeks boiling over. "I didn't win the lottery. I lost the love of my life, the father of my child, and you're treating it like I hit some financial jackpot." My father's expression hardened. There's no need to be dramatic. Kevin knew the risks with his heart condition. He should have taken better care of himself. And now that he's gone, it's just practical to discuss how his assets should be distributed. Family should help family. In that moment, as my father casually blamed Kevin for his own death while simultaneously trying to profit from it, something snapped inside me. The grief that had left me passive and numb for 2 weeks suddenly crystallized into razor-sharp clarity. "Get out," I said quietly. "Rachel, be reasonable," my mother began. "Get out of my house." I screamed, the force of my anger physically propelling me to my feet. "How dare you come here asking for Kevin's money? How dare you blame him for dying? He was worth 100 of you, and you couldn't even be bothered to comfort your own daughter when she was breaking apart." My parents looked genuinely shocked at my outburst. They had never seen me truly angry before, having raised me to be accommodating, to avoid conflict, to be the good daughter, while Sophia got to be the demanding one. "We're only asking for what's fair," my father said stiffly, standing up. "We're your parents, Rachel. We deserve respect." "Respect is earned," I replied, my voice shaking. "And you've earned none. Now get out before Lily comes home and hears what kind of people her grandparents really are." They left in a huff, my mother making noises about me being ungrateful and my father muttering about reconsidering our relationship. I closed the door behind them and sank to the floor, trembling with rage and hurt. Later that afternoon, when I picked Lily up from school, she seemed more withdrawn than usual. In the car, she finally spoke up. "Mommy, why were Grandma and Grandpa at our house today?" My heart sank. "Did you see them?" She nodded. "Mrs. Wilson let me go to the bathroom during math, and I saw their car from the school window." "Did they bring something for us?" The innocent question broke my heart anew. "No, sweetie. They just came to talk to me about some grown-up things." "Did they ask about Daddy's money?" she asked, surprising me with her perception. "What makes you say that?" Lily looked down at her hands. "I heard Grandpa at the funeral telling Uncle James that we would get lots of money because Daddy died." "Is that true?" That my 8-year-old daughter had overheard such a conversation made me physically ill. "Lily, your daddy made sure we would be taken care of." "Yes. But money doesn't make up for not having him here with us." She nodded sagely. "I would give all the money in the world to have Daddy back." "Me too, baby," I whispered. "Me too." That night, I called Marcus, who had returned to Japan but was planning to come back for an extended stay during his summer break to help us adjust. I told him about my parents' visit and their demand. "Are you kidding me?" he exploded. "They want half of Kevin's life insurance? That's insane, Rachel." "I know. I still can't believe they actually asked, but I'm worried they might not let it go. My father can be very stubborn when he thinks he deserves something." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Kevin talked to me about his financial planning. You know, he was very thorough. Wanted to make sure Lily would be taken care of through college and beyond if anything happened to him. He would be furious about your parents trying to take that security away from her." "I know," I said softly, the familiar ache of missing Kevin intensifying. "I think I need to talk to Thomas about the legal situation just to be prepared." "That's a good idea," Marcus agreed. "And Rachel, don't let them manipulate you. Kevin protected you and Lily for a reason." The next day, I met with Thomas at his office. He was sympathetic but not surprised by my parents' behavior. "Unfortunately, I see this kind of thing more often than you'd think," he said, reviewing Kevin's will and insurance documents. "But I can assure you, everything is airtight. Kevin designated you as the sole beneficiary of his life insurance and retirement accounts. Your parents have absolutely no legal claim to any of it. Could they contest the will?" I asked, worried. Thomas shook his head. "The will is clear and properly executed. And even if they tried, they have no grounds. Kevin was of sound mind, and parents have no automatic right to inherit from adult children, especially when there's a spouse and child." That reassurance should have made me feel better. But as I left Thomas's office, my phone buzzed with a string of text messages from my parents and, surprisingly, from Sophia. "From my father, we need to discuss this situation like adults. Call me." From my mother, "I raised you better than this, Rachel. Family comes first." From Sophia, "You've always been selfish, but this is low even for you. Mom and Dad deserve better. The hypocrisy of Sophia, who had barely looked up from her phone during Kevin's funeral, accusing me of being selfish, was almost laughable. Almost. If it weren't so painful. That evening, as Lily and I were eating dinner, my father called. When I didn't answer, he left a voicemail demanding a family meeting at their house on Sunday afternoon. This concerns all of us, Rachel. Be there at 2 o'clock. Bring Lily. I set the phone down, my appetite gone. Involving Lily in this ugly situation was the last thing I wanted, but maybe it was time to have everything out in the open, to make a final break if necessary. With Thomas's reassurance about the legal aspects, I felt more confident in standing my ground. Was that Grandpa? Lily asked, pushing her peas around her plate. Yes, I admitted. He wants us to come over on Sunday. Lily was quiet for a moment, then asked, do we have to go? The fact that my daughter, who had once loved visiting her grandparents, now seemed reluctant, spoke volumes. I think we should, I said carefully. Sometimes it's important to face difficult situations directly. She nodded, a look of determination crossing her face that reminded me painfully of Kevin. Okay, but can I bring something with me? I have an idea. What kind of idea? I asked, curious about her sudden intensity. Just something Daddy taught me about standing up for yourself, she said cryptically. Can I use the computer after dinner? I agreed, wondering what my 8-year-old was planning, but trusting that whatever it was, it came from the good heart and strong values her father had helped instill in her. The days following my parents' visit were filled with conflicting emotions. Grief for Kevin remained a constant heavy weight, but now it was complicated by anger and betrayal toward my family. In quiet moments when Lily was asleep, I found myself revisiting memories from childhood, seeing them in a new, harsh light. There were the dance recitals where my parents left early to make it to Sophia's softball games, but never the other way around. The Christmas when I received practical clothes while Sophia got the expensive art supplies we both had asked for. The way my academic achievements were expected, while Sophia's C grades were celebrated as trying her best. Small inequities that seemed insignificant individually but formed a pattern when viewed collectively. I called Amanda, Kevin's assistant who had become a friend in the weeks since his death. Am I overreacting? I asked her after explaining my parents' demand. Is it normal to feel this angry, or is it just grief making everything worse? Rachel, she said firmly. If my parents had done that to me, they'd be dead to me. What they did is beyond inappropriate. It's cruel. Her validation helped, as did a long conversation with Marcus that evening. He was planning to take a leave of absence from his teaching position to come stay with us for a few months. A kindness that brought me to tears. Kevin made me promise, he explained. Years ago, when you were pregnant with Lily, he made me swear that if anything ever happened to him, I would be there for you both. I intend to keep that promise. The contrast between Marcus' loyalty to his brother's wishes and my own parents' behavior couldn't have been starker. Meanwhile, Lily had been unusually focused on some project she was working on in her room, hunched over her desk with colored pencils and paper. When I asked what she was doing, she just smiled secretively and said, something important for Sunday. On Saturday, I decided to review Kevin's financial documents more thoroughly, wanting to be fully informed before the confrontation with my family. Kevin had been meticulous about our finances, keeping everything organized in a home office filing cabinet. As I went through the folders, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it in Kevin's handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened it to find a letter dated just 3 months earlier, around the time of his last physical. My dearest Rachel, it began. If you're reading this, it means the doctor's concerns about my heart were more serious than I let on. I didn't want to worry you, but I've updated our will and insurance policies just in case. Everything goes to you, with provisions for Lily's education and future. Use it well, live fully, and know that my greatest joy was being your husband and Lily's father. I broke down sobbing, both devastated that he had kept his health concerns from me and deeply moved by his foresight and care. Kevin had known there was a risk and had prepared for it while trying to spare me the worry. It was so typically him, both frustrating and loving in equal measure. The letter continued with specific instructions about the insurance policies and investments, but also included a paragraph that caught my attention. I've set up a separate trust for Lily that can't be accessed until she's 25, except for education expenses. This is important, Rachel. Your father has approached me twice about investment opportunities that were thinly veiled requests for money. I declined politely, but he seemed to think my death would create an opportunity for him to access funds through you. Don't let that happen. Your parents have made poor financial choices for years, and while I sympathize, Lily's future cannot be compromised to bail them out. The revelation that my father had already tried to get money from Kevin while he was alive added another layer of betrayal. Kevin had protected me from this knowledge, probably trying to preserve my relationship with my parents. Even in this, he had put my feelings first. Armed with this new information, I called Thomas again to verify that the trust Kevin mentioned was indeed secure from any claims. He assured me it was ironclad and also suggested I bring a copy of Kevin's letter to the family meeting. It's not legally necessary, he explained. But it might be useful to have Kevin's explicit wishes documented if they try to pressure you emotionally. Sunday morning arrived with a sense of impending confrontation. Lily was unusually quiet as we got dressed, but there was a determined set to her small shoulders that reminded me of Kevin before an important client meeting. "Are you sure you want to come?" I asked her one last time as we prepared to leave. "You could stay with Ellen instead." She shook her head firmly. "I need to be there, Mom, for Daddy." On the drive to my parents' house, Lily clutched a manila envelope to her chest, still refusing to tell me exactly what was inside. "It's a message from me and Daddy," was all she would say. As we pulled into the driveway of the suburban home where I'd grown up, I noticed several cars I recognized as belonging to my aunts and uncles. My parents had apparently invited an audience, perhaps thinking I would be less likely to refuse them in front of extended family. "Ready?" I asked Lily, my hand on the ignition. She nodded, her face solemn beyond her years. "I'm ready, Mom. Don't worry." We walked to the front door, hand in hand, both of us drawing strength from the other. Before I could ring the bell, the door swung open to reveal my mother, dressed formally as if for church, her face set in a practiced expression of concern. "Rachel, Lily, come in. Everyone's waiting in the living room." We followed her through the familiar hallway into the large living room where I'd spent countless childhood Christmases and birthdays. Now it felt like walking into an ambush. My father sat in his recliner, positioned like a judge presiding over a court. Sophia was perched on the arm of the sofa, scrolling through her phone. Around the room sat my Aunt Rita, Uncle James, and my father's brother Terry with his wife Barbara. "Thank you for coming," my father said formally, as if this were a business meeting rather than a family gathering. "We have important matters to discuss." I remained standing, keeping Lily close to my side. "Before we start, I want to be clear that whatever you have to say, you can say in front of Lily. She has a right to know what's happening in her family." My mother frowned. "Rachel, this is hardly appropriate conversation for a child." "If it's not appropriate for her to hear, then it's not appropriate for you to be asking," I replied evenly. "This concerns her future, too." My father cleared his throat. "Fine. We'll get right to the point. Your mother and I have been discussing the family financial situation. As you know, we helped you considerably throughout your life, from college tuition to the down payment on your first house." I bit back the retort that they had paid half as much for my education as they had for Sophia's art school, which she never completed. This wasn't the time for old grievances. "We believe," he continued, "that given the substantial windfall you've received from Kevin's passing, it's only fair that you assist the family in return. We're proposing a distribution that would secure our retirement and also provide some assistance to Sophia, who, as you know, has struggled financially as an artist." Sophia looked up from her phone long enough to give me a smug smile, as if my husband's death were some cosmic balancing of the scales between us. "I've prepared a breakdown of what we consider a fair distribution," my father said, passing me a printed document. As I scanned the document, which detailed not just percentages but actual dollar amounts, I realized they had somehow discovered the exact value of Kevin's life insurance policy, likely through my Uncle James, who worked in the insurance industry. "You want 65% of the money that's meant to secure my daughter's future after losing her father," I stated flatly. "Money that Kevin earned and specifically designated for us." "Family takes care of family, Rachel," my mother interjected. "Your father and I are getting older. Our medical expenses are increasing, and you have to think about the bigger picture." "The bigger picture," I repeated. "Like how you couldn't be bothered to leave Sophia's birthday party when my husband died?" That bigger picture? Uncomfortable silence fell over the room. My Aunt Rita shifted in her seat, looking embarrassed. At least someone had the decency to recognize how inappropriate this all was. Now Rachel, my father said in his patronizing tone, we've apologized for that unfortunate timing. But you have to understand, we had guests from out of town. We couldn't just leave. Actually, you could have, I replied. You chose not to. This isn't productive, Sophia cut in. The point is, you're suddenly rich while the rest of us are struggling. Mom and Dad sacrificed for you your whole life. They deserve security in their old age. And what about Lily's security? I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Do you think Kevin died so that you could buy a new car or go on cruises? That money is for his daughter's future. My father stood up, his face reddening. Now you listen here. We are your parents. We raised you, fed you, clothed you. You owe us respect and consideration. Respect. I laughed bitterly. You haven't shown me or Lily an ounce of respect or genuine concern since Kevin died. All you care about is what you can get from us. That's not true, my mother protested weakly. We care about you, Rachel. We're just trying to be practical. Practical would be asking how your granddaughter is coping with losing her father. Practical would be offering to help with meals or housework or emotional support. Not this. This vulture behavior. The room fell silent again. My Uncle Terry looked uncomfortably at the floor while his wife Barbara glared at my father, clearly as appalled as I was. Into this tense silence, Lily suddenly stepped forward, still clutching her envelope. I have something to say, she announced in a clear, strong voice that startled everyone. My mother attempted a condescending smile. Sweetie, the adults are talking about important things right now. Lily stood her ground, channeling Kevin's quiet confidence. This is important, too. It's about my daddy and what he would want. All eyes turned to her, this small figure standing so bravely in the center of adult conflict. Even Sophia put down her phone. Daddy taught me that when people show you who they really are, you should believe them, Lily said, her voice only slightly trembling. And when people only come around when they want something, they're not really family. She turned to face my parents directly. You didn't come to see us when Daddy died. You didn't help Mom when she was crying every night. You didn't ask me if I was okay or if I needed anything. You only came when you wanted money. The raw truth from an 8-year-old's mouth seemed to land differently than when I had said similar things. My mother's carefully composed face crumpled slightly while my father seemed at a loss for words. Lily opened her envelope and pulled out a sheet of paper. I made something for you because I know that's why you really came to see us. She walked over and handed the paper to my father. It was a child's drawing, but as I glimpsed it over his shoulder, I saw it was designed to look like an invoice. At the top in Lily's careful handwriting, it read, Bill for real love and support. Listed below were items like, being there when Daddy died, $0, not provided. Helping Mom when she was sad, $0, not provided. Hugging me when I cried for Daddy, $0, not provided. Being real grandparents, priceless, but not paid. At the bottom was a total, $0. That's why you came, right? For money. This is what you earned. The silence in the room was absolute. My father's hands trembled as he held the paper. My mother began to cry, whether from shame or manipulation, I couldn't tell. Sophia stared at Lily with an expression of shock, as if seeing her niece for the first time. I think we're done here, I said quietly, taking Lily's hand. Don't contact us again unless it's to apologize and show genuine change. Lily deserves better grandparents than you've been, and I deserve better parents. As we walked out, leaving my stunned family behind, I felt a strange mixture of sorrow and liberation. We had lost more than Kevin. We had lost the illusion of a supportive extended family. But in that loss, there was also clarity and the freedom to rebuild our lives without toxic obligations. In the car, I hugged Lily tightly. That was incredibly brave. I'm so proud of you. She hugged me back. Daddy always said we have to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Was I right, Mom? Yes, baby, I assured her, tears streaming down my face. You were absolutely right. The drive to my parents' house had been tense with Lily unusually quiet beside me, that manila envelope clutched tightly in her small hands. I'd been so focused on preparing for the confrontation with my parents that I hadn't paid enough attention to what my daughter was planning. Now, as we drove away from the house where I grew up, I felt equal parts pride in her courage and sadness that she had to grow up so fast. "Lily, how did you come up with that idea for the bill?" I asked as we drove home. She gazed out the window for a moment before answering. "Daddy and I were watching a movie once where someone gave an invoice to a mean person. Daddy said sometimes people need to see on paper what they're really worth." Her voice cracked slightly. "I think Grandpa and Grandma needed to see that they haven't been worth much to us lately." The wisdom in her words, echoing Kevin's values, brought fresh tears to my eyes. "Your daddy would be so proud of you today," I told her, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "So am I." My phone began buzzing incessantly with calls and texts from my family, but I ignored them all. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a boundary being firmly established. Whatever fallout came from this confrontation would have to wait until Lily and I had processed what had happened. When we got home, Marcus was waiting on our porch. He had flown in early from Japan, wanting to surprise us, and Ellen had given him the spare key to wait inside. Seeing him, so much like Kevin in his gestures and smile, was both painful and comforting. "How did it go?" he asked, embracing us both. "Aunt Lily was amazing," Lily declared before I could answer. "She stood up to Grandpa and made him see that he was being mean about Daddy's money." Marcus raised an eyebrow at me. "Aunt Lily." I smiled despite everything. Apparently, I've been promoted from Mom to Aunt Lily for bravery points. Over dinner, we told Marcus everything that had happened at my parents' house. His expression darkened when I described my father's distribution plan, but he broke into a proud smile when Lily explained her invoice idea. "That's pure Kevin right there," he said, ruffling Lily's hair. "Creative problem solving with just the right amount of well-deserved guilt trip." That night, after Lily went to bed, Marcus and I sat in the kitchen drinking tea and talking about next steps. "They'll try again," he warned me. "People like your parents don't give up easily when money is involved." I nodded, thinking of my father's stubborn persistence throughout my childhood. "I know, but I'm not going to give in. Not just because it's wrong, but because it would betray Kevin's explicit wishes." "Have you thought about what this means for your relationship with them going forward?" Marcus asked gently. It was a question I'd been avoiding since the confrontation. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to cut them off completely. They've shown their true colors so clearly, but another part of me wonders if that's fair to Lily. They're her only grandparents on my side. Are bad grandparents better than no grandparents?" Marcus countered. "Kevin's parents adore Lily, and they actually show up for her. Quality over quantity, right?" He had a point. Diana and Robert had called Lily every other day since Kevin's death, sent care packages, and were planning an extended visit. They were grieving, too, but they put their granddaughter's needs first. The next morning, my phone showed 8 missed calls from my mother, 3 from my father, and 1 from Sophia. There were also numerous text messages, ranging from angry accusations to tearful apologies that felt more like manipulation than genuine remorse. I decided to respond to just one message from my mother: "We need to talk about what happened." My reply was simple: "There's nothing to talk about until you can acknowledge the harm you've caused and show real change. Lily and I need time and space." Then I blocked their numbers, a temporary measure to give us breathing room. I also emailed Thomas to inform him of what had transpired and asked him to be on alert for any legal maneuvers my parents might attempt, though he had assured me they had no grounds for any claims. Over the next few days, my parents tried various approaches to re-establish contact. They sent flowers with apology cards that spoke vaguely of family misunderstandings. They attempted to reach me through mutual friends. My father even showed up at my workplace, only to be turned away by security when I refused to see him. Surprisingly, it was my Aunt Barbara, Uncle Terry's wife, who provided an unexpected source of support. She called from her personal phone, which I hadn't blocked, asking if we could meet for coffee. Wary but curious, I agreed. "I want you to know that not everyone in the family supports what Brad and Carol did," she told me when we met, referring to my parents. Terry and I were horrified. We only went to that meeting because they told us it was about planning a memorial scholarship in Kevin's name. Her honesty was refreshing, and it helped to know that not all of my extended family were complicit in my parents' scheme. They've always favored Sophia, Barbara continued, confirming what I'd felt but doubted for years. We've all seen it, but no one wanted to interfere. Maybe we should have. A week after the confrontation, a formal letter arrived from my father, written on his business stationery as if to lend weight to his words. It stated that unless I was willing to come to a reasonable financial arrangement, they would be forced to reconsider our relationship with you and Lily entirely. It was meant to be threatening, I suppose, this idea that they would cut us off. Instead, it felt like permission to move forward without the burden of toxic relationships. I filed the letter with Thomas in case it was ever needed as evidence of their intentions. 2 weeks after our confrontation, my mother tried a new tactic, showing up at Lily's school at pickup time. Fortunately, I had already informed the school about the situation, and they called me immediately. By the time I arrived, the principal had politely but firmly asked my mother to leave, reminding her that only authorized individuals could interact with students. Standing in the school parking lot, my mother looked smaller somehow, less imposing than she had throughout my childhood. "You're turning everyone against us," she accused when she saw me. "No, Mom. Your own actions are doing that," I replied evenly. "Please don't come to Lily's school again. If you want to rebuild a relationship with us, it needs to start with respect for our boundaries. We're your parents," she protested, tears forming in her eyes. "You can't just cut us out of your life." "I'm not cutting you out," I clarified. "I'm asking you to step back and reconsider how you want to be part of our lives. Do you want to be the grandparents who support and love Lily unconditionally, or the ones who saw her father's death as a financial opportunity? The choice is yours, but there are consequences either way." She didn't have an answer for that, and we parted without resolution. It was the last direct contact I had with either of my parents for nearly 2 months. During that time, I focused on Lily, on starting to build our new normal without Kevin, but with the support of those who truly cared for us. Marcus stayed with us for 3 months, his presence a daily reminder of Kevin in the best possible way. He taught Lily to play chess, something Kevin had planned to do. He helped me sort through Kevin's belongings when I was finally ready, sharing stories and memories that made the painful task bearable. Kevin's parents visited for extended periods, filling our home with warmth and genuine love. Diana taught Lily to bake Kevin's favorite cookies, maintaining a connection to her father through shared activities. Robert took her fishing, patiently showing her how to tie the knots Kevin had learned from him decades earlier. Meanwhile, news of my parents' behavior spread through the family grapevine. Aunt Rita called to apologize for her presence at the ambush, explaining that she'd been told it was a gathering to discuss supporting us. Uncle James, who had initially seemed aligned with my father, sent a card expressing his regret for not speaking up during the confrontation. Even Sophia eventually sent an email that, while stopping short of a full apology, acknowledged that the timing of their financial requests had been insensitive. It wasn't much, but it was the first time in our adult lives that she had conceded any wrongdoing. 3 months after Kevin's death, on what would have been our 13th wedding anniversary, I received another letter from my parents. This one came in a plain envelope, handwritten rather than typed on business letterhead. It was the first communication from them that felt potentially genuine. "Dear Rachel and Lily," it began. "We've spent these past weeks reflecting on our behavior and the pain we've caused you during an already unbearable time of loss. There are no excuses for what we did. We allowed greed and self-interest to override our love and responsibility as parents and grandparents. We failed you both, and we failed Kevin's memory." The letter continued with specific acknowledgments of their actions, from missing the funeral to the attempted financial grab, without the vague language of their previous apologies. They didn't ask for forgiveness or for contact to be resumed, only expressed hope that someday we might have the opportunity to demonstrate through actions, not words, that we can change. I read the letter several times, trying to gauge its sincerity. Then I showed it to Marcus before deciding whether to share it with Lily. "It seems different from their other attempts," he observed cautiously. "Less manipulative, more accountable, but ultimately it's your call whether to believe it." I tucked the letter away, not yet ready to make a decision about how or whether to respond. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too profound. Time would tell if their remorse was genuine or just another strategy. For now, Lily and I were focusing on healing, on building our life without Kevin, but with his values and love as our foundation. Whatever happened with my parents would be determined by their actions going forward, not by promises or apologies, however well crafted. As Marcus prepared to return to Japan, with plans to visit again soon, he helped me organize a memorial gathering on Kevin's birthday. Unlike the funeral, which had been somber and formal, this was a celebration of Kevin's life held in our backyard with his favorite barbecue food and music. Friends and colleagues shared funny stories about Kevin. His parents brought photo albums from his childhood. Lily presented a memory book she had created, filled with ticket stubs, notes, and mementos of activities with her father. Notably absent were my parents and Sophia, who had not been invited. It was a boundary I needed to maintain for now, creating a safe space for grief and remembrance without the tension their presence would bring. As the gathering wound down and guests began to leave, Lily tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, can we invite Grandma and Grandpa next time?" she asked quietly. "Which grandparents, sweetie?" I asked, though I knew who she meant. "Mom's parents," she clarified. "The ones who asked for money. I think Daddy would want us to give them another chance if they're really sorry." Her compassion, so like Kevin's, brought tears to my eyes. "We'll see," I promised her. "If they show us they've really changed, maybe next time." It wasn't forgiveness exactly. Not yet. But it was an opening, a possibility that the future might include some form of reconciliation. For now, that was enough. The envelope confrontation marked a turning point in our lives. In the immediate aftermath, the division in my extended family was stark and painful. Some relatives sided firmly with my parents, viewing me as the ungrateful daughter who refused to help family. Others recognized the inappropriate nature of my parents' demands and offered quiet support. My Aunt Barbara became an unexpected ally, calling regularly to check on Lily and me and occasionally passing along family news without pressure or judgment. Uncle Terry, though less demonstrative, showed his support by sending Lily books and science kits, remembering her interests in a way my parents rarely had. The most surprising reaction came from my cousin Jennifer, Sophia's daughter, who was in her early 20s. She reached out via email about a month after the confrontation. "I've always seen how differently Grandma and Grandpa treated you compared to Mom," she wrote. "What they did after Kevin died was inexcusable. And I want you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you're wrong for standing your ground." Her message meant more than she could know, validation from an unexpected source that I wasn't crazy or selfish for protecting Lily's future. My parents' initial reaction to being cut off was a campaign of manipulation. They enlisted family members to plead their case, sent guilt-inducing emails, and even attempted to use Lily's school as a point of contact. When these efforts failed, they shifted tactics to more direct threats, suggesting they might contest the will, despite having no legal grounds to do so. Thomas, Kevin's lawyer friend, responded to these threats with a firmly worded legal letter outlining the baselessness of any potential claims and the possible consequences of harassment. After that, the direct pressure eased, though the emotional fallout continued. Throughout this difficult period, I was surprised by how many people stepped forward to support us. Kevin's colleagues established a college fund for Lily, separate from what Kevin had already arranged. My neighbor Ellen, a retired teacher, helped Lily with homework when grief made concentration difficult. Even my boss at the architectural firm where I worked as an office manager showed unexpected compassion, allowing me flexible hours to attend grief counseling with Lily. 6 months after Kevin's death, Marcus returned for another extended visit. This time with news. "I'm transferring to the university here," he announced over dinner one night. "I've been offered a position in the linguistics department starting next semester." "You're moving back to the States?" I asked, surprised. Marcus had been living in Japan for nearly a decade. He nodded, glancing at Lily, who was practically bouncing with excitement. "Kevin made me promise to be there for you both. It's easier to keep that promise if I'm in the same country, ideally the same city." The decision to reconfigure our lives without Kevin wasn't simple, but having Marcus nearby made it easier. He didn't try to replace his brother, but his presence kept Kevin's memory alive for Lily in countless small ways, from the same quirky sense of humor to shared mannerisms that sometimes caught me off guard. On Lily's 9th birthday, 4 months after the confrontation with my parents, I received another letter from them. This one came with a modest gift for Lily, a book about astronomy that actually aligned with her interests, suggesting a level of thought that had been missing from previous gifts of Pink Princess items she had never cared for. The letter acknowledged the hurt they had caused and asked not for money or even forgiveness, but simply for the opportunity to see Lily on her birthday, even if just for 15 minutes in a public place of your choosing with you present the entire time. After discussing it with Lily, who was cautiously open to the idea, I arranged for a brief meeting at her favorite ice cream shop. I set clear boundaries in my response. This was not a resumption of normal relations, but a tentative first step that would depend entirely on their behavior. The meeting was awkward but surprisingly free of drama. My parents seemed genuinely chastened, focusing entirely on Lily, asking appropriate questions about school and her interests without bringing up money, the past conflict, or making demands. They had clearly rehearsed their approach, but the effort itself showed a willingness to change that I hadn't expected. As we were leaving, my father asked quietly, "Could we possibly do this again sometime? Maybe next month." It was the lack of entitlement in his request, the understanding that access to his granddaughter was a privilege to be earned rather than a right to be demanded, that made me consider it. "We'll see," I replied. "I'll let you know." That tentative beginning led to carefully structured, occasional visits over the next few months. My parents remained on probation, so to speak, but they consistently respected the boundaries I established. They never mentioned money again, never tried to see Lily without my permission, and gradually demonstrated through actions rather than words that they understood the damage they had done. A year after Kevin's death, we held a memorial service on the anniversary. Unlike the confrontation several months earlier, I chose to invite my parents, making it clear that this was a significant test of their commitment to rebuilding our relationship. To my relief, they came appropriately somber and supportive, bringing a photo album of Kevin at family gatherings that I hadn't even known existed. They stayed in the background, not making the day about them or their relationship with me, but simply honoring Kevin's memory alongside everyone else who had loved him. After the service, my mother approached me cautiously. "We've been seeing a family therapist," she confessed. "Trying to understand where we went so wrong, not just after Kevin died, but throughout your life. It's been illuminating." It wasn't an overnight transformation, and there were still awkward moments and old patterns that emerged occasionally, but the effort was consistent, and over time, a new relationship began to take shape, one based on mutual respect rather than obligation or expectation. Sophia took longer to come around. Her initial reaction to being cut off from access to Kevin's money was anger and resentment, manifesting in nasty social media posts and attempts to turn family members against me. But as our parents gradually reformed their behavior, her position became increasingly untenable. Eventually, after nearly a year of minimal contact, she reached out with a genuine apology. "I've been jealous of you my whole life," she admitted during a tense coffee meeting. "You were always the smart one, the responsible one. When Kevin died and left you financially secure, it just amplified every insecurity I've ever had. It doesn't excuse what I did, but I want you to know I'm working on it." It was perhaps the most honest conversation we'd ever had as sisters. It didn't immediately repair our relationship, but it opened a door to the possibility of a healthier connection in the future. As for Lily and me, the journey through grief was ongoing, but evolving. The sharp, constant pain of early loss gradually transformed into something more manageable, a sadness that could coexist with moments of joy and hope. Lily still had nights when she cried for her father, but she also had days filled with laughter and normal 9-year-old concerns. With Thomas's help, I established a foundation in Kevin's name that provided financial education for underserved communities, something he had been passionate about. Running the foundation gave me purpose beyond surviving day-to-day, and connected me with people who shared Kevin's values. On the second anniversary of Kevin's death, I took Lily to his favorite spot by the lake. We sat on a bench watching the water, remembering him together. "Mom," Lily said thoughtfully, "I think the envelope I gave Grandpa and Grandma helped them." "What makes you say that?" I asked. "Well, they're different now. They listen more. They ask about my feelings. They remember what books I like." She picked up a stone and skipped it across the water the way Kevin had taught her. "Daddy always said, sometimes people need to see themselves clearly before they can change." "Your dad was very wise," I agreed, amazed yet again by my daughter's perception and resilience. "I still miss him every day," she said. "But I think he'd be happy about how we're doing, don't you?" I put my arm around her, this remarkable child who carried so much of her father in her. "Yes, baby. I think he'd be very proud of us both." The truth was, losing Kevin had revealed exactly who in our lives was truly family and who was not. Some relationships had been irreparably damaged, while others had deepened in ways I never expected. New connections had formed, creating a support system built on genuine care rather than obligation. My parents were now cautious figures in our lives, working to earn back trust, one respectful interaction at a time. Marcus had become a constant, loving presence, an uncle who took his role seriously. Kevin's parents remained devoted grandparents, their love for Lily a direct extension of their love for their son. And Lily and I had each other, bonded not just by grief, but by our shared experience of standing up for ourselves and discovering our own strength in the process. The inheritance that my parents had so coveted went untouched, except for living expenses and Lily's education fund. The material security Kevin provided was valuable, but his true legacy was in the values he instilled in us, the courage he inspired, and the love that continued to guide our choices. As we walked back from the lake that day, Lily slipped her hand into mine. "I think the best way to remember Daddy is to be kind but strong like he was," she said. "To help people but not let them take advantage." "That's exactly right," I agreed, squeezing her hand. "That's how we honor him every day." The journey of grief isn't linear, and healing doesn't mean forgetting. There are still days when the absence of Kevin feels like a physical wound, when I reach for him in my sleep or start to tell him something before remembering he isn't there. But those moments no longer define our lives. Instead, we've learned to carry him with us in the choices we make, the boundaries we maintain, and the love we continue to share. The family that emerged from our loss isn't the one I expected to have, but it's built on a foundation of genuine care and respect, stronger for having been tested. If you've ever experienced family betrayal during grief or had to stand up for yourself against those who should have supported you, I hope our story reminds you that you're not alone. Sometimes the most difficult boundaries to establish are with the people we've been taught all our lives to accommodate. But protecting yourself and those who depend on you isn't selfish. It's necessary.